you're a car driver, you'll be too aware of the pain that parking your car represents, particularly if you're anywhere near a main road or in the city or in an area of high demand like Bondi, let alone an airport or a hospital. Car parking is always a grudge purchase, in my view, and I suppose it is in yours as well. We always resent paying for it because car parking is never a destination, nor is the car park. It's simply a means to an end. And it might surprise you to know that car parking in Australia is currently a $1.6 billion industry. The car parking industry has seen various changes and challenges over recent years, and it has had to see them because it's involved changes in demand due to urban development, public transport enhancements, and the rise of ride-sharing services amongst other changes and developments. The industry is also adapting to new technologies and innovations to meet changing consumer needs and to enhance efficiency. I thought we might have a look at parking in general in Australia, and because some of the research to support what I've just referred to above is provided by Parking Australia, I can think of no one more qualified to chat about it than the President of Parking Australia, Angelique Mentis, who joins me in the studio right now. Angelique, welcome to Monday Drive.
Thank you so much, Alan. It's fun to be here.
It's lovely to be. You haven't been in the studio before, have you?
I have not.
Okay, well, you're very welcome. Firstly, just while you get used to the air in the studio here, your involvement with commercial and residential property development preceded your interest in car parking. In fact, you're a corporate lawyer with many years of experience in the intense world of finance law, not only in Australia but overseas as well. And I should say it's something in the order of 30 years.
It's a while now.
It's a while now. What was behind the transition from that sort of life into the world of parking?
Well, thank you very much for having me today. The corporate finance world was my professional career. I practiced as a US corporate finance attorney for nearly 20 years, and that did involve a lot of globetrotting and a lot of late nights and a lot of big deals. Mm-hmm. And then I was blessed to have 3 little people join me in my life, and it became a little bit more challenging to live that corporate lifestyle and raise a young family. And during the course of that transition, I got involved in some property development privately. Mm-hmm. And over that experience came across issues that we faced in parking in residential apartment living, both personally and for developments that I was building. And so seeing a problem there, I thought I would try to solve it.
I did mention earlier that the parking industry has needed to adapt and keep up with technology. You founded your own car parking business in 2009.
About 9, 10.
Yep. Tell us a little bit about the technology behind what it is that you created and your connection to Bondi, in fact. In fact, I should have introduced you by saying that you are, in fact, a member of the local community here.
I am indeed.
We love the local community.
And I love Bondi. It's my second home. I'm here most mornings very early.
Okay, yeah. Well, I'm not. Tell us a bit about the technology behind That's My Spot.
So as a result of facing a problem where people kept parking in my parking spots in residential apartments, I decided to find something that could both protect the parking spot and be automated to make it easy to use and seamless, and to be able to share that with other people when I needed to or wanted to. And so I found devices that I was able to customise, to develop and to automate to be able to physically secure a parking bay without having to get out of the car in the rain, to automate and to be able to share with other people. And we call them parking bollards, but mm-hmm. They go up and down, and you'll see them, and they're very easy to use.
They go up and down, that is to say they don't recess into the ground.
That's right.
They fall flat to the ground.
That's right. And part of the reason behind that is any strata building is very careful about what compromises you make to their slabs. So you don't want to have any excessive insertions into the slabs.
Sure.
So these are surface mounted, very easy to use, and there's no hard wiring or power required to power them,
right.
But they are motorised, so really simple and non-invasive is probably the right word to use.
It's almost high-tech, low-tech, high-tech, really, isn't it?
It is. We call them simple robotics type devices. They have a motor, they have a little bit of a brain, and you can make them do things.
Let's move along a little bit to electric vehicles. They're all the talk of the town right now. What is the intersection point between EVs and commercial car parking stations?
Okay.
And I should remind our audience that you are in fact the president of Parking Australia, so you have some exposure to a number of car park operators, and we'll talk about them in a minute.
Yeah, as we do with local councils like the Mayor of Waverley and the Waverley, Woollahra, Randwick have actually got a great triumvirate little thing going, and there's a guy called Sam Wetherington there, and they have a policy that they've adapted and to deal with on-street EV charging to be able to help that.
Right.
But wherever there is a parking spot now is potentially an EV charging bay.
Right.
80% of charging of electric vehicles happens in the home. So in apartment buildings, they're going to have to adapt to this and to provide it as an end-of-trip facility. And so having the ability to provide those facilities to accelerate EV adoption, but to do it in a way that's sustainable and to enable sharing without over-capitalising is really important.
Right. Okay. I'm just going to change tack completely at the moment because do you drink coffee?
Yes.
Do you? Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Oh, that's good. Okay. A coffee, if you were to forego 1.5 coffees every month, that would add up to over $100 a year. And did you know that for under that you can get a full membership of Eastside Radio's supporters category, because that's only $93 a year. So for less than 1.5 copies per month, isn't that
That's
wonderful?
amazing.
Yeah, I just thought I'd throw that in because I like the idea of that. I mean, I'm obviously a supporter, but for those out there who were thinking that they might be prepared to sacrifice 1.5 coffees a month, then there you go, you could become an Eastside supporter. Anyway, let's get back to the topic. What do you think might be the opportunities for car park operators, given what you've just said about each spot is a potential charging spot for an electric vehicle? So
that's something we're addressing very much so, both with Parking Australia and the operators at the moment. Operators are operators as such. They don't own the asset, but they are keen to work with the EV Council and to enhance the resources available for EV charging. So they're happy to put those EV chargers into their parking bays. There are some barriers around load management, whether you can access the building for electricity, the landlords, etc., which they aren't responsible for.
Right, they're only the operators, aren't they?
They're only the operators. They're like a tenant so they've got to go through those hoops. But we see all the large operators moving forward to do that now, which provides more EV charging facilities, which overcomes the thought that some people have that there's not enough chargers around, and being able to ensure that they're available for people when they need them to charge is really important.
I think you said a moment ago that 80% of people charge their vehicles overnight. Well, every single night I charge my phone and my watch next to my bed. So surely people charge their cars at home more often than not, and in fact you've nominated 80% of that. So why do car park operators even need to provide charging options for EVs? Well, I can understand it on the basis of long distance, because if you go a long distance you need to charge your car. However, typically there are not car parks on the destination, say, to Broken Hill. So I'm not quite sure what the incentive might be there for.
So in a lot of... does everybody live in a house and have the ability to plug their car into an EV charger? No, not necessarily. A lot of people live in residential apartment buildings.
Right.
Those end-of-trip facilities aren't there yet. Though they're the statistics that are from overseas. The second highest place thereafter is in work environments. So you're seeing a lot of the city buildings. But if you think of, for example, all the city residents in the city of Sydney, they don't all have parking spaces.
Right.
They don't all have places to charge their vehicles. So if the operators can provide that end-of-trip facility in a car park, and we can work with councils in the New South Wales government to adjust the parking levy, which is a tax that the operators have to pay per parking spot in high-density areas, to promote EV charging and the adoption of electric vehicles, it's a win-win all round.
Okay, but I wonder, is the fact that there are so many unsold EVs sitting on docks and things, is that perhaps an indication that we're not actually so much into EVs as we pretend we are? And if that is the case, there wouldn't actually be any incentive for anybody to put charging facilities in the car parks anyway.
Because no one's trying to buy the electric vehicles at the moment?
Yeah.
I have a different opinion to that. I've been a proud EV owner since 2017. I'm on to my second one. And I think it's a timing issue. It's probably, you hit runs when it accelerates very quickly and there's not enough demand, and the supply comes in, and then people are waiting and they haven't planned it in. So I think it's, you look at the Netherlands, their EV charging uptake is like 90%.
Oh,
so
really?
it's huge.
Really?
It's huge. I think.
I was going to ask you, are we running a lone race here, or are we following the US and indeed the Netherlands and other places in this space, or are we innovators?
I think we're both. I think the US has got a very different dynamic. It's quite parochial, even amongst city to city and state to state around parking. The US is a very different animal. It's not even keeled. We work a lot with our international counterparts, both in the US and the UK. And you see what's happening in the Netherlands. They're very progressive. Right? They always have been in these sorts of areas. Do I think we're innovative? Yes, I do. We have a lot of our parking suppliers, industry owners, us technology providers. They display, they sell overseas, they are growing overseas. And I think Australia is a great market because we are quite small, but gives you the ability to test that technology, being English speaking and being quite progressive. It is a really good testing ground to launch products, especially in parking.
Okay, the time is 4:32. You're listening to Monday Drive on Eastside Radio, and I'm talking with Angelique Mentis, who is the president of Parking Australia. Angelique, domestically, wireless is taking over from cables. I wonder, are we approaching a time where you just drive your car into your garage and you don't do anything and it just charges on a pad? Is that the way we're going?
There's pad charging available for watches and stuff, and that's being trialled for vehicles. If you look at technology overseas, there's also induction being trialled under highways.
Right.
So I don't think there's one answer only. I think you've got to look at a whole lot of different ranges of ways that EV charging can occur, in the same way that you look at alternative energy, like whether hydrogen is sustainable for possibly not for residential vehicles, but for long distance, for long haul.
Indeed, nuclear.
Indeed, nuclear. Well, that's a very topical one this week, isn't it, Alan?
Certainly is. So cars won't be leading the way on that one, I don't think, anytime soon.
I don't think so.
Okay, I did say earlier that parking is generally regarded as a grudge purchase. What's your view as president of Parking Australia?
I think historically that's probably a fair call. People think that they should be entitled to free parking. And in fact, there's a very famous University of Berkeley professor called Donald Shoup, and he has a lot of followers called Shoupistas. And the price of parking is it's not free, Shoupistas, about parking maximums, parking minimums. And what it comes down to is what's the alternative cost and use of that land that you could do. So you don't pull up a vehicle. So people say, for example, you should provide EV charging for free. Or do you fill everybody's car with petrol for free?
No,
right?
You don't.
So you've got to balance the opportunity cost of that. So yes, I think it has been a grudge purchase, but I think the paradigm has shifted quite a lot. We've seen, especially since COVID, and the paradigm shift has come from just being the supplier side supplying a facility where you can park a vehicle, which is generally has been grubby and dusty and not very well manned.
I'm going to come back to that.
Not very right. To something that's about a customer experience. Because if you think about it, if you're not actually going to the parking station, you're going to a destination,
Correct.
Whether it's the theatre, whether it's the shopping centre. Generally, if you drive, the parking arrangements are going to be your first point of entry and your first experience
Correct.
of that site.
Correct.
So putting the customer and the driver in a much better frame of mind as part of their whole experience of that site has become really important. And I think the shift in COVID accelerated that because we came to contactless, touchless parking. We became much more aware of sanitisation and health and cleanliness. And I think that catapulted that what would have been a natural leave, and it accelerated much faster. Right. And I think as a result of that, the technologies that have come out of that have been very positive and proactive in enhancing a customer experience. So now it's no longer necessarily a grudge purchase because you're getting value and benefits out of it.
I understand that. A little Dicky Bird tells me you have some interest in the French language. Would that be correct?
I do indeed.
Okay,
Un petit peu.
Have a listen to this.
Eastside Radio has grown with the community since 1983, hosting a variety of shows and providing a place for the community to gather, share, and connect. Please help us to stop scrolling and start listening by calling up now on 9331 3000 to become a supporter during our radiothon, or sign up online at support.eastsidefm.org.
That, of course, is our French intern, Clara, and she's encouraging people to sign up in our radiothon. And talking of which, you're a local community person, as I mentioned earlier, and you embrace a lot of what is good about community and community radio. Maybe you'd be good enough just to read this little passage out for me.
Absolutely, Alan. Eastside Radio has grown with the community since 1983. Hosting a variety of shows and providing a place for the community to gather, share and connect. Please help us to stop scrolling and start listening by calling up now on 9331 3000 to become a supporter during our radiothon, or sign up online at support.eastsidefm.org.
And if Angelique Mentis, the President of Parking Australia, can suggest that to you, I think that's as good a credential as we're going to get. Thanks for reading that, Angelique. And just to remind our audience, for a mere $93 a year, you can have a full annual supporter status. And I've got to say that everybody who does sign up will, in fact, receive a supporters kit, and that will be mailed out to you shortly. We actually only do one call for support during the entire year, and that is this week. So you can expect to hear from us quite a little bit during this week. And it isn't a lot of money to help support a station where there is only one paid employee and the rest of us are volunteers, and we provide our time, and we'd like you to show your support. Okay, back to Angelique. Thanks for doing that. There are those who believe that you've just been talking about how car parks are evolving. There are those who believe that there are no positives in the world of paying somebody to enable you to park your car. What are some of the positives that can come out of the experience of car parking?
Well, I want to sort of step to the side for a little bit, because there are some people that need parking, for example, accessible parking, disability parking. You need to provide spaces for those. And in fact, local councils all have requirements under the New South Wales law to provide both a certain number of parking bays and location of them, the sizes of them. So it's important about having accessibility for the entire community to be able to do things like that. And if you think about it, EV charging, and you've got somebody in a wheelchair that needs to charge an electric vehicle, they're very different dynamics that you have to think about. So when you're planning those parking spaces, it's really important to think about those sorts of things. In terms of user experience, for example, if you go into if you're going to watch a show, or you're going to a shopping centre and you've got a valet parking type arrangement, or are you prepared to pay that for that extra service that someone comes, looks after your car, parks it for you, you're dropped at the door? Are you, if you're a parent with a pram, for example, having that ability to have your children in and out of a parking space, having good lighting to be able to feel safe. There were some New South Wales state government initiatives about safety at night, particularly around parking and women in parking. So that security and safety, I think, to me, it adds value. And I think if you look at everybody else's different particular issues, they would probably say that there is some level at which that it does add value in terms of a customer experience.
Well, it's always some positives where people see negatives. But one of those, in China, I believe ladies-only parking is being offered in some shopping centres. And the characteristic of ladies-only car parks is that they're wider.
They were funny.
They're wider.
They were bigger.
And they're painted pink.
They were painted pink. They were wider. They were closer to entryways. They were closer to lighting and safety and security.
Should I be offended, or should you be offended by that?
I think I wrote an article about that a few years ago. I don't know if they still are painted pink, maybe rainbow colours. Be inclusive, right? Everybody should have that ability to reserve that parking bay. But the fact that they were wider to accommodate for the general theme that women are bad parkers, well, I'm going to let that one slide.
Okay, but they
I'm a very good parker.
Oh, I'm sure you
with
are.
my reverse camera.
With your reverse camera, and I'm sure, and I hope it doesn't catch on here in Australia. I'm certainly not aware of any. Are you?
No, I'm not aware of any.
That's good. Tell me, what does Parking Day mean to you?
Oh, that's very interesting. That was a concept developed in San Francisco by a design firm, an urban design firm, in about 2005, I think. Mm-hmm. And what it was trying to showcase was the intersection of urban design, architecture, and multi-purpose of use. Mm-hmm. So what they would do, I think it was the third week
Friday.
There you go, of September each year. Mm-hmm. And they would convert little parking spaces into parklets. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you'd see them around Bondi now at the moment.
Yeah.
They've converted them to little park areas. And they would come up with a different design each year, or different people would have different ways of showcasing how you could repurpose the same site for a different purpose and have multi-use. During COVID, there was obviously a lot of parklets to encourage social distancing. Mm-hmm. And when we couldn't drive as readily. So I think it's a good way of showcasing design and the ability to multi-purpose different spaces, including parking, which may or may not always be there going forward.
Right. And is it a thing here
during COVID,
Australia?
I think it was a little bit. I don't think it's a big thing here. We don't showcase it so much. But it was interesting. It's more a design feature, and it was pretty cool.
You mentioned COVID a couple of times, and I'm wondering whether COVID actually had any impact on the industry. I mean, clearly people weren't going into work.
Look, the operators, the parking industry as a whole suffered tremendously during the COVID years in terms of, people weren't going anywhere. They weren't parking. The operators were, all of them were really struggling. Mm-hmm. But from that, we rebounded, and from that, new innovations and technology came out, which is always the case when you're in sort of dire straits. You think outside the box. Yeah. And I think that catapulted technology to be far more forward-thinking and how we could leverage technology rather than just the physical asset. Right.
Talking about physicalness of roads and car parks and parking, there is a trend towards bike lanes. Now, I've spoken to certain local politicians on this station, on this program before about that. How have they impacted car parks, or do you have any view on the merits or otherwise of bike lanes?
Look, I see parking as part of an integrated holistic transport mobility platform. There are a whole lot of different ways people can get to a destination. If you look at, for example, the City of Sydney, where they've put a number of bike lanes in on all the main streets, obviously that takes away parking spaces and pushes it from on-street to off-street. And that's where the operators and the asset owners and the building owners need to provide more parking. Right. Different councils have very different strategies around that, whether it's on-street or off-street. For example, Waverley's putting on-street EV charging, which you would have seen now, and they've painted a bunch of the EV charging bays. So I think bike lanes serve a purpose for councils or localities where there's a lot more distance and it's harder to get from one place to the other. Parking may be more relevant. So I can't really say, but I think it's got to be a combination of a whole lot of different transport modalities.
Okay, we're going to wrap up.
That's not in French.
No, it's not. We're going to wrap up shortly. But before we do so, I just want to remind people that at 5 o'clock, I'll be drawing a major prize for somebody who has, within the last, since the Radiothon started, I'll be drawing a major prize for the person, entirely at random, for the person one of the people who have joined in. I've also got a couple of very special awards to give away specifically during this program, and that'll happen after 5 o'clock. But at 5, get ready for today's major draw. Angelique, back to you. That's My Spot. That's My Spot is not a car park operator, but it's a contributor to the equitable distribution of car parking, and the emphasis on equitable. How does it address equity? sustainability and safety and other matters that we've been speaking about today?
So I think a lot of the sharing economy that we've seen lately has been great. The millennial generation, they share a whole lot of things. They share cars, they share houses, they share parking. And so rather than just building out more parking stations and parking bays, we're better off sharing them more efficiently and more effectively. And that's where, so it makes our cities better places to live, increases livability, sustainability. It makes us better consumers. You'll see so many of the car sharing solutions around that as well. So we feel that by being able to individually share each bay by an automated system, we are enhancing livability and sustainability with our solution.
And if people wanted to know a little bit more about that particular issue,
they can find us at that'smyspot.com.au.
That's my spot without the apostrophe, right?
All one word. That'smyspot.com.au.
That'smyspot.com.au. I've had the very great pleasure of speaking with Angelique Mentis this afternoon, all about parking. She's the president of the, what's it called, Parking Australia, isn't
Parking
it?
Australia.
Parking Australia, and a successful entrepreneur from our very own Eastside radio listening area. Angelique, thank you so much for coming in and talking to us today.
Thank you so much, Alan, for having me.
Let's just listen on the way out to Let's Just Get Out in the Parking Lot.